Hey everybody, this is Jon Croft, and this is Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft. And Rebecca's here.
Hello.
How you doing, Rebecca?
Good.
It's great to see you. I'm so glad that we have video now. This is just so revolutionary to our
Yes,
whole thing. Isn't it great?
it is. I like it.
And I'm so glad we had that got to have Marcus last week. It was such a
That was
great
awesome.
interview.
Yeah.
Um, So we've talked about this. This is what our subject's going to be. It's going to be hitting the wall. And so this isn't in reference to our interviewing or the fact that we have video or the fact that things are going great. They're looking up in a certain direction. What we're talking about hitting the wall is with not the end of, but the nearing the end of our evergreen content here for this show. And so what that means is we're going to still have evergreen content every now and then, which is more about general, broad subjects like culture, but that's starting to thin out because I've approached a lot of subjects already. I've broached many cultural topics in general, quite a bit already, and we're only on episode 31. So how efficient am I? Wow. Um, So what we're going to start doing is talking about newsworthy subjects, stuff in the news, stuff that's current, and we're also going to have interviews like we did with Marcus more. And let's see, we talked about this, right, recently? Do you remember some of the other stuff I said we might do? Like
Analysis of films, film analysis.
analysis. Yes, film analysis. I call it analysis for me, even though it's kind of like reviewing or curating. But for me, I think of it as analysis. And I don't consider myself a reviewer, but the way I analyze films is different than a reviewer in my mind. But so yeah, it'll be like it'll kind of I don't know how big these are going to be, but there's some people who go down big rabbit holes, rabbit trails with movies. So I'm not going to try to do that. I'm not going to try to make like a 3 hour review or whatever, but it's going to be it could be more substantial than your typical review. Um, and I still have to kind of play with this idea of what I'm going to do. So, and then there's also kind of like reacts. We might react to some media or content online, whether it's a trailer or what have you. Um, I feel like there's something we're missing though, something we might also end up doing. Yeah. It's so weird. I'm so unprepared right now. But yeah, this is one of those times where I did not write any notes. But like one sentence. And but like I said, we're hitting a wall of evergreen content. So this is what it looks like when I hit a wall. I'm just kind of like, what are we going to talk about now? Um, but it's certainly not to bore you because we have plenty planned in the future. But I'm letting you know right now, hitting the wall is me going, oh, I've already discussed this and I've already discussed that and I've already discussed that. Um, and so if you want to find out what the culture war means, you can go back in um, my videos already and read up on that or listen to that. That was in my first few episodes. If you want to find out what Media Moses is doing or what Media Moses is, you can look that up. If you want to find out what Trithia is or Trithia Films and stuff like that, you can look that up. You can look up my history with film. Um, you can look up what it means for our culture to be collapsing and what we need to do about that, how to build culture and engage in culture creation. So, and how all this interacts with the church as well. So this is all very important. And so speaking of the church, we will get into it because hitting the wall today is like hitting a church wall. So we're going to be hitting a church wall today, and where artists cannot go past, which is the church making life difficult for artists. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to share a article here. It's from, let's see, what's his name again? I actually commented um, on his tweet as well. He sent this out in a tweet. Joseph Holmes, who is a reviewer for Religion Unplugged and a few other people. Uh, I'm 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 proud of him for being brave enough to criticize the church's films. And so the church doesn't put out good films, guys. I just want to put that out there. The church is a church. It's not made of artists, and it doesn't really support artists. So whenever it tries to pretend to put out art, you can just know right off the bat it's not art. So there's nothing that's going to be very interesting about it. The music's not that good. Um, the visuals and the camera work is not that good. If you want to be entertained, you're probably not going to be entertained. So I know this sounds kind of um, you know, cold and heartless of me to say this, but if you're holding on to church art with your like your pearl clutching, that's probably how you're going to feel. Um, so this article kind of just bolsters what I just said. And it's called If You Want Young Men to Leave Christianity, Have Them Watch The Forge by Joseph Holmes. So this came out today.
Wow.
And so we're going to read a lot of this. We don't need to watch the trailer or anything, but you know, it's not like it's a huge retreat from the Kendrick brothers' previous films. It's in line with what they've been doing. Um, but you can see from the trailer that just by itself that it separates the film into two parts, and that those parts are the man's world and the women's world. And the women's world is in the church, and they in a world of love and acceptance and beauty. And it's for men, which is distraught, and it's confusing, and it's angry, and but then by the end of the film, these men get together just like the women, and they do exactly what the women do, and they hang out together and talk. So um so just from what I said, you can probably pick out where there's a problem here, right? So the review, the focus of the forge, I'm quoting right now from Joseph Holmes. The focus of the forge on the modern plight of young men in society is laudable, but the film's inability to empathize with these men or offer a compelling vision for their lives will turn them away from Christianity more than draw them to it.
Wow.
He goes into the history of the Kendrick brothers a little bit in his review, and the Irwin brothers and faith-based film in general. He reminds us that the Kendrick brothers movie War Room was #1 at the box office when it came out. Um, so this is a significant part of the faith-based film industry, um, them and their films. So, okay, now we talk about the film again. They would they would then have a character preach the gospel. He's talking about their films. So, and giving you an example of the kind of films they make. They would have the character preach the gospel to the protagonist, dealing with that problem and show them that the answer was to repent and make Jesus the Lord and their Lord and Savior. The Kendrick's films were often accused, I think rightly, of being more sermons than movies, but there was no denying their popularity within Christian circles. Even now, with them being eclipsed by more popular Christian filmmakers, they still have a loyal audience. With their latest film, The Forge, the Kendricks turn their attention to a social issue that has dominated social media in recent years: the boy crisis. What will we do with those boys? Oh my goodness. The Forge follows Isaiah, a high school grad living at home with his mom, Cynthia, um, playing the sister of her character from War Room, with no plans for the future. Oh no, he has no plans for the future. How could that have happened? That could be a clue as to why there's a problem. I say this as a father. No plans for the future. After his mom threatens to start charging him rent to live there, Isaiah is taken under the wing by a man who promises to help him because help him become the man God is calling him to be. So finally, a man gets involved to help him out, right? And by the way, in the trailer, you can even see how she kind of blesses him out, which is all too common for young men to be blessed out by their parents and told to hit the street or become homeless, um, because there's so much compassion in the church. They're just being compassionate to these young boys. Um, the film deserves credit for tackling the problems. This is back to Joseph's review here. The film deserves credit for tackling the problems of wayward young men. Men in our society are falling behind in school. Oh no. Dropping out of the workforce. Oh no, the poor workforce. Abandoning marriage and parenthood. Oh no. And increasingly ending their lives. Well, I wonder why. So it's great to see faith-based industry films trying to address helping men achieve their potential instead of them being in the grave, right? Furthermore, the empathy shown to moms of such sons is vivid, with Cynthia struggling with wanting the best for her son, but being unable to draw it out of him because she's not a man. And it's hard for, here's the quote, it's hard for a woman to call out the man in her son, end quote. That's actually in the trailer as well. And so, boy, the poor struggles of moms. Um, the scenes where she responds by seeking support from her friends and praying to God about it together are honest and heartfelt. And when her son does turn around, wow, he turned around. How did that happen? Her shock and gratitude for how God has turned things around is genuinely moving. Once again, the faith based film industry does a great job of giving a far too rare voice to the experiences of Christian moms. So rare. So rare. I mean, who's going to speak for the moms? Uh, sorry, I know I'm making a lot of jokes here. But what I'm trying to do is identify that there's some serious like issues with the optics of this movie. So back to the review, he says, therein lies the problem. This is clearly not a movie for the men who are lost. This is a movie for their moms. Worse, it's a movie that will probably not inspire lost men to turn around, but rather push them away. The film largely ignores putting us in Isaiah's point of view or understanding his perspective. The movie starts out with a parade of scenes where Isaiah is a stereotypically frustrating young man. He plays video games instead of doing his chores or looking for a job. Terrible. He rolls his eyes at his mom when she confronts him and whines when she threatens to charge him rent. How could a boy of his age do that? That's just unforeseeable. Um, I'm sorry. Just I haven't even seen the film, and I can imagine it happening in my head. It's just um, so He obnoxiously tries to hit on a girl at a coffee shop. Who would do such a thing? And is disrespectful to her dad. Each of these scenes ends with an eye roll or a lecture from the adults in the room, whether that's his mom, the coffee girl's father, or an office receptionist. And of course, we would all do that, right? We would all just give him an eye roll, uh, because toxic masculinity, right? Um, so back to the review. Why does Isaiah play so many video games? Why does he have so little ambition? Why doesn't he listen to his mom? The film either ignores those questions or reduces them to because his dad left without digging much deeper. So I'm not going to read this whole article, but, and by the way, I'm just so grateful to hear someone actually say the things out loud that I think when I'm watching these kinds of films. It feels like there's this huge gaping blind spot in so many of these faith-based films where they haven't even considered real people in their own churches and their perspective. I mean, this is why I came to my church and asked them to do if I could do podcasting in the church because there's enormous amount of opinions in the church. There's an enormous amount of people who have feelings and thoughts about so many different things, and the pastors don't even know about them. Pastors have no idea that their own congregation has feelings and thoughts about things. Because why would the people come to the pastor? Like the pastor is holier than them and better than them. So, you're just opening yourself up to criticism and to, being eye rolled at and being lectured by some adult, which is what young men get all the time. Lectures and stuff. Like why they're not doing what's expected of them. And, a woman can do whatever she wants with her body, but a man has a duty and responsibility to do a dead end job, to get respect. Like it's so myopic and short sighted. This whole nonsensical thing. So there's these serious issues in the church, glaring issues. And the reason I'm talking about this social issue, the reason I'm talking about this particular article is that, last week I talked with Marcus Pibman from Lore TV about faith-based film and the responsibility to improve faith-based film. And we went down into the nuts and bolts sometimes about how we're going to create an incubator, how this has to happen. You know, this is why it has to happen because these kinds of tone deaf films in the church that just have no artistry whatsoever is like it's like a pimple on Jesus's face to me. It's like, what is going on? Like, why are you allowing this in the body of Christ? This is not a Christian piece of art. It's not even art. So, I don't even understand how we've allowed this in the church. People should be outraged by this. People in the church should be outraged. How is the church going to survive without these men? It's not going to survive without these men. Why do we think that that's possible to happen for these men to survive, for these churches to survive, if they don't treat men with respect? I don't understand how, like later in the review, he gives us the iconic speech from Breaking Bad, not a Christian show. Here's the speech on Breaking Bad. He says, a man provides, and he does it even when he's not appreciated or respected or even loved. He simply bears up and he does it because he's a man. That's from a secular show, kids. That's not a Christian show. Do you think that these faith-based shows are going to have something hard-hitting like that? No, they're not. And even if they said those specific words and copied it from Breaking Bad, are they going to say it with any conviction or anything that a man would listen to? No, they're not. So, Christians are known, sadly, they've been known since the 90s, very sadly, to just rip off secular movies, secular music. And why did they feel that they must do this? Why do they feel this is a good idea? You know, why? Because Breaking Bad says these things that are important for men to hear, that we bear up because you're a man. I'm not even saying that's the best message, right? But at least it gives you a clue as to what it's like for men, right? And how men feel and think about these things. Real men, you know, not the kind of like sissy men that they're raising in churches today, right? So real men, they do feel a duty and a sense of duty, but it doesn't come from someone wagging their finger at you. That's that's actually going to demoralize you. Why? Because it's not a conversation. So, at least Breaking Bad, they were depicting men trying to do something real, trying to have an impact in the world. And then we wonder why these red pill people exist, where they're men doing bad things. But because it's their way of finding their manhood in their journey, we we say that they're bad people. Like these are real issues, folks. These are real issues in the world. This is why I'm reading this article. This is why I'm reading this review by a Christian reviewer who reviews good and bad films. And he's calling it like it is. And I agree with him. I have to admit I haven't seen the film, and I probably will not see the film. I've seen a few Kendrick Brothers films, and I did not like them. And I don't know why they exist. Because and it's not to make the Kendricks feel bad. I'm sure they've already heard people like me talking about their work. Um, but uh, you know, the truth is that all filmmakers need to hear from critics. And I've seen film students do better work than the Kendricks do, film college students. And so the fact that the church supports the Kendrick brothers and throws money at them, to me, says that it's not artists who are in charge of faith-based movies. It's not people who care about good culture in the church who are validating these films. It's people who want to hear a sermon in the theater, and they feel that this is going to make a difference in the world, is to put more sermons out there instead of creating art. And so I think that they're afraid of artists. I think that they distrust artists, Christian artists. And I think that's a serious trust issue. So the fact that the church has such trust issues is really disturbing to me. And I've experienced this my entire life as an artist.
Can I read this
Yeah.
paragraph? It says Jordan Peterson in his video, A Message to the Christian Churches, which tried to show churches how they can appeal to young men as he has, described how he pitches men's purpose within the biblical framework. You have a woman to find, a garden to walk in, a family to nurture, an ark to build, a land to conquer, a ladder to heaven to build, and the utter catastrophe of life to face, in truth, devoted to love and without fear.
Yeah.
And that just feels, I mean, to me, what do I know about this? But that just feels inspiring. Um,
This is
That feels,
what it says there is that the church does not provide this framework for them.
they're not inspired, they're not providing inspiration.
Yeah,
And
because they can't. They're a feminized church. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. I'm just trying to be careful with my words. Um, like I just feel like there's not a focus on Christ as the head in the church. And that's a big part of this problem, I think, the feminization, as you're talking about, is that
Mhm.
Christ is not seen as the head. It's it's more like something that will happen later, right? Later on in life, we'll meet Jesus when we go to heaven, and he'll tell us if we did a good job or not, rather than, hey, we have a leader, we have a king, we have a prince of peace who's leading us, and we follow him.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not a emphasis on that, on him. It's just kind of like a nod. We're just sort of nodding to him, like, oh, yes, and there's Jesus, the reason why we're all here. Thank you, Jesus, for
There
saving
he is on the
us.
crucifix.
Yes. But it's like no one's really engaging that male leadership of Jesus and the Father and letting that be the tone of the church. I mean, this is like who could be a better male role model than himself? And so that's a big issue for me that I notice a lot is that church, the place where we go to encourage each other to practice Christianity, is not building up the biblical framework, the inspiration. Instead, it's like you said, it's an eye roll and it's a lecture
Mm-hmm.
um, of, getting their life, like you've got to get your life together or whatever. Like, how about your identity? How about your identity as, this warrior, like
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Peterson portrayed? That would
Yeah,
be a
I
good.
have to say, like, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I
That's
just
okay.
have to say that a lot of people might look at me up here and say, what does he know about the church? Like, what does he know about why the church is doing what it's doing? And let the church do its thing. And if it wants to hire these directors and whatever, let it do its thing, whatever, it doesn't matter. Well, I grew up in the church, right? My parents worked in the church. They were going to be missionaries. Just some background. So from the beginning, I was in the church. I worked as a janitor in the church. I've worked at the Salvation Army for building maintenance in the church. I've worked, you know, I've helped the church in a variety of ways, and and I've asked very small amount from the church, from my church, and from the few churches I've been to. But what I have asked for is time to use a building, time to use a room in the church to do things like interviews, to do things like, uh, have meetings, things like this. And I've been given the runaround so many times from people in the church who have pretended to be friends with me, and then I've talked to them, and I've kindly been told, "Oh, that's great, that's wonderful," and then nothing, like no progress, just a lot of runaround. And if the church understood like how much I could use a little bit of help, just to do an interview or something in a room. Like these are expensive to rent out room. It's expensive to rent out rooms. I mean, it could cost you $200 to rent out a room for 2 hours, you know? And, um, you know, and I've been told so many reasons why this can't happen. I've been given so many reasons why, like artists can't be trusted. I've been told that. I've been told that an artist might do something in that room, you know, that I don't know what an artist might do. I think even Jesse mentioned, oh, an artist might have a nude model or something. Like this is some of the stuff you hear. This kind of like what what am I, a German barbarian from 800 AC? Like what the heck? Like, do you honestly think I'm going to bring a naked model into a church and paint her? Like, what kind of ridiculousness is this? Or that I might say some bad language or something, right? What kind of nonsense is this? There's so many excuses why a man cannot accomplish something in the church. You wouldn't believe. Um, anyway, like you know, I've talked to so many pastors and assistant pastors and ladies who worked at the church in the office, and so many nice people who are so nice, and they give you no help whatsoever. And I think this is why this review and this movie are so prescient, is because it really reveals the feminization of the church to such a degree that I think it's humiliating for the church. Like, I think it's ridiculous because I think as you study the difference between a patriarchal church and a feminized church, you get to see that feminized churches don't get things done. Like you get run around and you get a lot of excuses. And what men are about and boys are about, and I know you could probably vouch for this as a mom of boys, right? Or two boys. Boys do they play in action, in the world of action, getting things done.
Yeah.
That's what they like to do.
Yeah.
And obviously that means they're different from our daughter. Our daughter
Yeah.
is very sweet. She's very intelligent. She's very well behaved for the most part.
Oh
And
yeah,
our boys are like bouncing off the walls
the
with
difference
like, do
is
things.
yes.
That's their
Yeah.
mandate. I'm going
And
to just get
even
stuff done. And of
absolutely.
course, when they're young, right, they don't know. They're getting stuff done means playing with your toy or going on a swing or running around or bothering your sister. That's getting stuff done for them at that age.
Mm-hmm.
But like as you get older, right, you actually want to accomplish things as a man, right? You want to accomplish something that you can be proud of. And so when you meet people in the church and you get raised up in the church and you want to do things in the church, you want to accomplish things for God. That's just what you want to do naturally, you know? Of course, the for God part can become a little like, well, how do I know this is a Christian thing to do or what God wants me to do? And that's another question altogether. You have to deal with questions of faith, personal faith, when you get to that point. But nevertheless, the same thing is true, which is that men and boys want to get things done. They want to go do things. And in the church, if the church keeps telling them, no, you can't do things here because this shakes up our church too much, they're just going to leave, you know? And so if the church feels like it's not getting enough things done, I wonder why that is. Like, if it's always supposed to be done on your terms as a leader in the church, that's not how things work. The church is made up of many people in the body. And so essentially, if you love the body, you love the body of Christ, you cherish the body of Christ, you wash Christ's feet. What does that mean in the body, in the church? It means you're allowing the church to express itself, to do the things that God is inspiring it to do. That's your love of the church. That's your love of Christ, right? And I've told people this before, but the essential job, it's very simple. And this can be broken down into the commandments also that Jesus gives us, the two commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind and soul, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, right? Well, you could boil that down as a church member very simply, even even more simply than that. Our job as Christians is to care for the body of Christ. And I mean that quite literally. Christ's literal body. You love Christ. You care for his body. And Christ says, "This is my body, the church." And so you care for the church then because it's an extension of his body. You need to see the body of Christ as a finger of Christ or a toe of literal toe of Christ or an elbow of Christ. If you love Christ, you love that church member like it was a
Yeah.
part of Christ's body. Don't look down on it. Don't ignore what it says.
Yeah.
Don't refuse to help it.
Right.
We're literally talking about the body of Christ. So I'm sorry, but you have to treat your members in your church with a little more respect,
Hmm.
when it's saying, "Hey, I want to talk about something," or "Hey, I have an issue," or "Hey, I feel like
Hmm.
God is inspiring me to do something." Like you can't just give the church the runaround, you know?
Yeah.
And so
And I
this example of this young man in this film, to me, the film is is presenting another fantasy because the Kendricks brothers I would describe as American church fantasies.
mm,
It's the fantasies of the modern American church.
hmm.
And one of those fantasies is to make these young men sit up straight in their chair and do the right thing and do the things that they're supposed to do. This is just another fantasy of the American church, the corrupted, feminized American church. Actually, what you should be doing is listening to this young guy and letting him amaze you with ideas, with
Hmm.
with his calling, letting him amaze you.
Yeah, absolutely. Letting him fail.
Oh, absolutely. Failure
Hmm.
is such a part of a man's life.
Hmm.
If you want boys to become men, you let them fail all day.
Well,
And then you congratulate them and say, "Good job, man."
yeah, and they gravitate toward it. Like what I've noticed with our boys, which is hilarious, is that they're not interested in safety. Um, they are just going to go for it. They're just going to go for it. And, my daughter's a little different. She would go for it. She'd, fall off a stool or whatever, and she'd be like, whoa, I'm not going to do that again.
She'd almost cry. I mean,
She'd cry. Yeah. The boys, they fall off a stool and they're like, whoa, I'm
that
going to
was
do
great.
that 50 more times. I'm going to see
Or they
all the
just
different
laugh.
ways I can fall off the stool and hurt myself. And there's just something, it's not just the church, it's school as well that tries to, squeeze men into a mold
Hmm.
um, that they don't necessarily need, it's not instinctive for them to sit
No,
still at the table. Like, it's okay to ask them to do that,
sure.
but it's going to be completely different from how a girl does it. And you can't make a comparison and say, well, this kid is naughty. This boy is naughty because he
Yeah,
can't sit at the table as long as this girl can.
right.
And I feel like that's kind of the message of this movie is like, this boy is naughty.
Right.
because he can't find his purpose and his calling in life and he's just playing video games. Maybe that's a little bit of the tone. Um, and all the ladies that know better are looking down at him. And I don't know what the conclusion of the movie is, but I hope, I hope it's really Jesus-y. But
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's more like what you said. It's more fantasy, Christian American fantasy of like he got up and he got a job. And that was
Yeah,
that.
you can, what I have seen from the trailer is that it looks like this guy at this job helped him and then helped him find a place to meet with other men where they could talk just like the ladies and talk about their private issues and help work through some difficult challenges, you know. And so this is like an example of victory for him to get through these depressing times of not being kind of aimless, right? And so that's the goal is to get this guy to stop being aimless, right? And not realizing that sometimes aimlessness is a part of being a young man or young woman. I mean, that's not
It
necessarily a bad thing to be aimless.
I think it absolutely is. I think
Yeah.
it's something worth looking into. They say that people in their 20s are still kind of almost in a stage of adolescence.
Yeah.
Um, you hear of
You remember
high
that? I
school.
remember that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, they say, or there's this thing, where you take a gap year, right? You graduate high school and then you take a year off before going into college. Um, I'm not saying like it's wrong to just jump into a job and just jump into the workforce. That's great too. But I think it's, worth noticing that
Yeah.
this is a trend, not just with men, but with girls too. And give it some grace and let it work itself out. It's not going to be helped
Right.
by people looking down their noses at you. I mean, this is why, and that's the title of the article, right? If you want them to leave Christianity, this is the thing with
Oh yeah.
Christianity is that you don't want to be looked at, you don't want to be judged. People say, oh, Christians are so judgy,
Right.
right? And so this is the thing where this is the bad light that sometimes Christians are portrayed in. And can we just distance ourselves from that? I mean, we have Jesus who says, there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus.
Yeah.
And we have Jesus who is himself the judge. And we're not called to be constantly looking at the moral state of other people.
Right. Right.
That's not our calling as Christians. Our
No,
calling
it's really not.
is to
In many
fix our
ways, it's
eyes.
just not our business.
Yeah, our calling is to fix our eyes on him.
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
think church, like culturally in Christianity, there's the fix their eyes on self, which is how can I get better? How can I need to read a book that's going to teach me how to pray better. I need to be a better person. I need to go to a church. I need to go to church, get my life right with God.
Just that whole
So
be a better person
it's all
thing is
about
so much
self.
nonsense.
Yeah, it really becomes about self, where I think what we're really called to do is just behold him. And then in that beholding, there's a transformation that happens. And hopefully that would happen culturally as well,
Yeah,
to where it becomes less about people. If you feel like you've done something, sorry, I'm getting preachy now. If you feel like you've done something to make yourself a better person, then you're only a step away from looking down on someone else who hasn't done that thing to make themselves a better person.
right.
If they would only just do like what I'm doing, then they would be a better person,
Yeah.
right? But Christ did it all. Christ did it all.
Mm-hmm.
And we're included in what he did. We're included in his salvation. We got saved from the works. We
Yeah.
don't have to work our way into righteousness and to peace with God. we have Christ who accomplished peace with God. So if we could get rid of that idea, then maybe we could stop looking down on men.
Or each other.
or each,
Women look
yeah,
down on each other. See,
yeah.
this to me is a lot of the identifying problem. Well, first of all, you were talking about how we look at ourselves versus how Christ looks at us. These are two different things. And so we have to remember that the way Christ looks at us is often not at all the way we look at ourselves. We're looking at ourselves in many ways very socially, right? And so, in other words, it's not really even us, it's some kind of idea of who we're supposed to be,
Hmm.
right? That we're projecting onto each other. And the thing is, I recognize that women are different than men. And women tend to be more social. They tend to be more about a pecking order socially. And the truth is, a lot of women don't understand how men are different in this way.
Hmm.
We're just not the same way as women are. Like, often, actually, we like the outlier and the different person. Like, we like the people who are like not going to socially submit to some kind of rule, right? This is often actually how we pick our wives. We pick our wives based on, oh, does she submit to that pecking order in her women's group? I respect her, right? Because she's willing to stand out and do her own thing. And so that my, you know, this lady's got a little more bravery, a little more spunk, than a lot of these other women. And so, and often we do the same thing with each other as men oh, is he willing to do that hard thing? Like more than the other guys? And you'll find that one guy who's brave in one area will be kind of afraid in other areas, right? Like some guys will do like some terrible job, like septic tank job or something. And they're like, yeah, but I make good money. And I'm like, I would never do that. But I will spend hours researching things in books. You know what I mean? Like, and the septic guy would be like, I would never do that. That just sounds like a bore to me. So it's like there's bravery from men in some ways, and other men have bravery in other ways. And, and other of us are, old school warriors, like police officers and, you know, um, military got dudes. So it's just like, or we work on an oil field or, like there's a lot of different kinds of bravery you can have today as a man. Um, but men we just think differently. We have a different way of accomplishing things than women. We don't think as much about the same kind of social kind of virtue signaling things that women think about. And we also we want to get things done, even if we fail, especially if we fail sometimes, because, many of us are wired differently. Some of us are wired more to accomplish more things. And that means we have to get used to failure. And a lot of guys are wired to accomplish only a few big things. And that's kind of like me. I'm kind of wired to accomplish some really big, ambitious things, but then I don't have to do that very much, right? Because I'm working on big projects. So, where a lot of guys, they have to have a victory every day to make their life complete. And for me, I can have a victory once a month, but it's just a big victory, you know. And I'm doing a lot of work and accomplishment to get there. And so I do a lot of planning and a lot of things like that. Where a lot of people they don't like to do that stuff. Um, and so we're all wired differently. When I come to the church and I see a lot of the things that need to be done in the church, I don't expect everything to go my way. When I talk to a pastor or whatever, and I'm like, well, what if we tried this and we tried that? What I expect is a relationship, where they're like, well, there's a reason we can't do it this way, and there's a reason we are doing it this other way. And well, let's talk about it. Like I want to help you. So when I'm trying to accomplish things in the church, I'm not just some kid. who has no conscious understanding of how businesses work and how churches work and how all these things work. So this is just ridiculous to think that uh, any artist who doesn't actually care about the church, doesn't actually care about God, doesn't actually care about their art, is going to be coming to a relationship where they want um, to accomplish something in the church, and they're not going to even, you know, like go through a pros cons list of how to do things this way. Like, of course we are, you know? And sure, some guys might not like how things shake out. That doesn't mean we should just step away from the relationship and then be like, well, there's no way we can accomplish this. Let's just move on. Like, that's not the way we should approach this. We should approach it like a relationship. So, we come honestly, we make mistakes. Like, I remember when I was talking to Marcus Pittman about this last week, and we were one of the things we were talking about is the incubator, right? And how a church can start an incubator. And we were using the example of a comedy club and or a Saturday Night Live style uh place where comics can bomb, you know? And I was like, well, the church needs to open up, and allow these guys to do a recording and stand up in front of some people and bomb, you know? And and basically I think he was thinking of it in the church to the degree that it was like it had to be in the front of the church, like a service or something, or during the service. And that's not the way I'm thinking about this at all. I'm thinking about it in terms of the church is a community, right? And the church has ways it can help its community. And I've been to multiple churches and they always have community rooms. They have not just the sanctuary, but they have access to lots of resources. And, if I want to just go in a classroom, like one of the classrooms on one day a week and bring my camera and like five other guys, and we just record each other making jokes in front of each other. I don't understand why that's not a good idea. Like, that's just a great idea, you know? And so, we brought up the fact that Angel Studios did Dry Bar Comedy, and Angel Studios are, Mormons, and they understand that bombing means you might say some bad language every now and then. And this doesn't defend them. That they don't mind supporting these artists, these comics, because they know that Dry Bar Comedy is a hit. It's getting tons of views. It's bringing eyeballs to Angel Studios. And so when you have this kind of forethought, which isn't even that much of forethought, you could be an 8-year-old and understand this, that, if you make a product, you're going to bring eyeballs to your group. And not only that, but you're going to help these guys to get better at what they do. So if you want good Christian comedians, they need to practice and they need to bomb and they need to say terrible things and then nervously joke about it later and be like, yeah, that was too far. Like, this is just how people talk. It's not even comedians. And Rebecca, you could vouch for this. I've been with guys who are Christian guys, and sometimes people say some rude, obnoxious things they probably shouldn't say. And then what? We go, well, we probably shouldn't have said that later on. Did the world end? No, we can still be friends. In fact, I feel a kinship with that Christian who I've been through a failure with them before. Like now I've been through, like now I see how nervous I felt, with this person. after I said something dumb. You know what I mean? Like, how is this weakening the church? This isn't weakening the church whatsoever. Quite the
Well,
opposite. We're
well,
strengthening our community by going through these failures with our community.
absolutely. I mean, when we feel like we're not allowed to fail, then we begin to keep secrets and hide ourselves from other people, mask ourselves and pretend that we've got it all together. And for a long time, this was the message that I was hearing from the church, which was something to the effect of um, good Christians have their life together, and it was even like such a misunderstanding, such a misdirection of the abundant life that Christians are meant to be living and experiencing, had something to do with success in the world. Like you have a good job, stable, like house, all of these things. That meant that you were succeeding as a creator. Well, this was
Right.
this idea that you're glorifying God by having all your ducks in a row.
This is so false.
What if we're glorifying God in our mess? What if we're glorifying God in our mistakes that perhaps we're making, we're failing, whatever, we're gung ho, we're the boy that wants to fall off the stool 20 times, but we want to do it for the Lord. And someone's watching us and they could say, wow, that kid is really making a mess of his life. What a
Easily.
fool. Or
Yeah.
they could say, wow, what a heart for God he has to keep going and going and trusting, right? And even though it's not working out, he keeps he
Working
keeps
out.
believing and he keeps trying and he keeps,
This
this
is
is
just such a
more.
fallacy, this whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. In this world, you will have trouble.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, Jesus said it so well. He said so many of these things so well when he said, every day has enough trouble in its own for you to add to it with your worrying. Like, we're not supposed to add. Like, every day he gives us enough to do. Every day he gives us something beautiful to look at. Every day there's a task for us to accomplish. He's already done that for us. We don't need to add. He's basically numbered our days and numbered all the things he wants us to accomplish every day.
Yeah.
And he's saying, don't add to it. You don't
Mhm.
need to add to it. It's already full and beautiful as it is. The more you concern yourself and worry yourself and add fear or add concern or add expectation onto
Mhm.
yourself, the more you're taking his beautiful picture and just muddying it up. No, don't do that. It's already beautiful. I mean, it's like some scientist looking at a daisy and being like, "We can improve on the daisy. Watch, I'll improve on the maybe next time."
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen, buddy. It's already perfect.
It is like that. It is like that. That's a great example because Jesus says this radical thing. Consider the lilies, right? Consider the sparrows. Like, this is
Already
not the
beautiful.
message that we
Yeah.
hear in the church. Like, that's a humble, dependent life. The sparrows, the lilies. That's not I got the car and I got the success. That's you've got to see with God's perspective to enjoy the beauty of the sparrows and the lilies. You can't be
Yeah.
looking at it, you know, from a worldly perspective. Then you're like, well, we got to mow down this whole field of lilies so we can, utilize the field or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and really, really, I think what he's saying is that, he wants us to be brave and approach life, in confidence that he has everything worked out for us. And so, it's not that everything's supposed to be quote perfect in in the way that we judge it. That's kind of the wonder of it, is that the point is that we don't see all these things perfectly. And so when we're looking at the daisy, we don't even see all of the perfection in the daisy. That's kind of the point, is that like it's already there. And as you look closer, you're just going to see more of it. But especially if you're looking in faith, right? If you're looking in order to tear apart the daisy, you will find things. And all of us can do that to our neighbor, to our brother, to our sister, is you will find I've met people who some would consider great Christians, and they cannot organize their closet. Like they're just like they're terrible at something that you don't know about. And they're just regular people, man. And so if we come at someone with like a magnifying glass, we're gonna find something. And so the problem is not them, the problem is you and your magnifying glass. Like that needs to be shut down. Like you can't just approach your brother and sister in Christ with a magnifying glass and be like,
Yeah.
hey, this person is not doing the thing I expect, you know? And frankly, like when I looked at the trailer of that movie, I was like, why is this mom so critical of this boy? I know he's not doing things that she would consider manly, but it's like, why not just have fun with him? Why not like play the game with him? And goodness gracious, that would probably solve so many problems, you know? And then she could be like, well, how, what did you do today? Like, and it's not like she can't never be critical of him, right? It's just that, we can't judge each other so harshly. Like, understand that, well, first of all, like we have kids, right? I would never put my young man or woman, daughter, son in a position where, oh, you're an adult now and you have no idea of what you're doing, where you're going, who you are, what you're good at. No idea. Like so many people I've met are
I
in
hear
that
you.
situation.
Yeah.
Why? Because their parents sent them off to school and they stopped learning about their son or their daughter. They don't
Yeah.
even know a thing about them anymore.
Mm.
And then when they come home, they just expect them to behave well, to keep their mouth shut, to do as they're told. And they don't learn a thing about them.
Hmm.
And then when you have a conversation and they say things you don't like, you wonder why you don't know who this person is, because you don't know them, right? You have to earn a relationship with them,
Yeah.
you know? And so we're in the position now as homeschool parents where I would never, ever in a million years put my kid in the situation where they're even 16 and they don't know what they're probably doing with their life,
Yeah.
you know? And I say probably because I would never dominate that. I would never be like, you're going to do this. That would be ridiculous.
Hmm.
They're their own person. But like, it would be about giving them tools and saying, look, you can do this really well. If you don't know anything else about yourself, know that you can do some things well. Like you're a this kind of person. That's because that's what I see in you, right? And you're a that kind of person, and you're a that kind of person because I have some experience,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm there to give them at least some worldly experience in a good way, where it's like you could monetize this, you could start a business, you could do this and do that, you know? And
Yeah.
so you're not ever supposed to send a kid out. It's just expecting them to perform and not giving them any tools. Like that is our own problem as modern American adults, parents. Like that's our issue. That's not their issue at all.
Yeah.
We're it's so shameful that we would even put expectation on these kids when we don't even know what we're talking about.
Hmm.
Like, how ridiculous is that? We don't know
Yeah.
them, but we expect them to know themselves. What? It doesn't make any sense when you think about it. So it's like young men in the church, they're going to be excited This is what a normal young man is. A normal young man sees the world as it is and says, look at that. That's really interesting. Hey, pastor, hey, friend, have you ever thought about that? And you're going to go, oh, I didn't think about that. And I'm like, I thought about that one thing. I think I could do this. And then you try to shut them down. That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. They're seeing beauty in the world. They're seeing something that can be done to make the world even more beautiful. And you're going to shut them down for that? Like, I'm sorry, that's not, I'm going to say it's not a Christian thing to do. It's, 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 it's devilish to do that. And so the
Or-
church of all people in the world should know this. This is
Yeah.
how the devil stops us from doing good in the world. So, we need to let these young young people are sometimes the most faithful people you'll ever meet. They're just they have the most pure, uncluttered view of eternity and of God, of almost any believer in the church you'd find in the church. And frankly, if anything, people shut them down because they're jealous of the
Mm.
uncluttered beauty of these young believers in the church. They're not cluttered with the worry that you have. They don't have the concerns about money and taxes. They don't have the concerns about so many things. Don't foist that onto them. Like, admire the beauty that they already have. You cannot improve that daisy. Just don't even try to do it, you know? So admire it. Say, I love your perspective. And if I can help you, I will help you. And then actually back that up and actually show up and help them. If you say, if you ever say you're going to back them up and help them and you don't do it, expect them to leave. Because that's one of the most disgusting things adult can do to a child. It's disgusting because an adult is telling you to not lie and not steal and not take from anyone else. And then you do that to them. It's disgusting. Like you're not a leader if you do that to a child. Like you should be in the back of the bus if you do that. And I say this with passion because it's happened to me where people have said, "Oh yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that. I'll meet with you, I'll talk to you about this. We'll do that," and then nothing. I mean, it's just like you don't want to deal with that, you know? Um so, yeah, I mean, if it's like that for me and I'm an adult, like I know there's demands people have on their lives. I know people don't always have time to talk to me or call me on the phone or whatever. But it's like if you tell someone you're going to do something and then you don't do it, and then you don't do that for months and months, like it's just like, how did our country become great with these kinds of people in it? Our country, yeah, America cannot become great with these kinds of people, you know? It's obnoxiously silly to think that. Like, no wonder the Chinese are beating us. They probably stick to their word, in business. So I mean, come on. This is supposed to be the church too. I mean, it's not even just it's not business. It's supposed to be the church. Like in business, you can't give excuses and be like, "Oh, I was out doing this other thing." You can do that in the church. You can be far more honest and transparent and
Yeah.
confess sin and do all this stuff, and you're not supposed to be judged for that. I would love to hear all kinds of things, you know, and we could make fun of each other for all our mistakes. But to just like ghost people and be like, oh yeah, we can't get things done here because I don't know, I just don't trust you or whatever. Well, then why don't we build some trust? Like this is just how things get done. You take time with each other, you talk, you build trust, And if I have issues in my life or if other artists have issues, tell them. Tell them, well, I could trust you, except there's one thing, you know?
Yeah.
This is the church, like don't be precious about this stuff. This is real life, so when we say we want to get things done and we want to affect the culture and we want to make art, well, these things are not easy to do. You have to have hard relationships sometimes where you are explaining things and you are disappointed in what the results you got. And, like there's a gamut of emotions in making art. And if you can't get through some of that stuff, you know, and come back to normal and then be like, well, that was a mistake I made, then what are we doing? I make tons of mistakes. Like I'm seeing myself as an interviewer, honey, and I'm watching my own video later and I'm just like, man, I'm terrible. I talk over people a lot. Like I think it's because I get excited and I'm a little bit autistic. Haven't we been talking about this? We're like, I think we're a little autistic, you know?
Yeah.
And I just think that the science of figuring that out has not always been perfect. So spectrumy people, it's like we don't even fully understand them, you know? Neurodivergent, whatever. I don't even know. But I think I was called ADHD or something growing up or something. My mom was figuring it out. And then a lot of us boys, might have been ADHD. And now it's just like maybe you were just full on autistic and you didn't even know it because it's maybe a little mild autism, but like I can be weird socially. I can be rude, can be obnoxious, I can have inappropriate jokes. They're just a little too on the edge. It's like a little bit too biting, like a little too caustic and like you did this thing, it's like makes people uncomfortable, I can imagine. And at the time I'm just having so much fun and I'm so excited. Sometimes just to be having a conversation with this person. And then I probably ruin it all with my inappropriate jokes and obnoxiousness. So it's like I'm not perfect about these things. Like I can be terrible about this stuff. But I have skills too, you know? And some of my skills are like um I think some people just don't know how to deal with some of my skills because, I can be very intuitive about things artistically. And so obviously the arts, you're going to have differences of opinion in the arts. That's just always what's going to happen. That's why you have people in charge, of this department, that department, and they have to learn to respect each other, and deal with someone who has a different opinion than them. And maybe you're complaining behind their back or whatever, and you're like, I wish they would do this. Well, we still do our job. Like we just do our job. We do the best job we can do, and then we move on and we make a good product. And, this is how, the church should be doing this and more. Like we should be showing that kind of respect to get things done, you know, and more in the sense that we don't have to be talking behind each other's backs, being like, I wish they would listen to me. You could just tell people. And yeah, I mean, you probably don't want to be as autistic as me, but you should be like respectful about it and be like, well, this is just how I feel about it. And I'm sorry if that is offensive or whatever. But, and all of us are improving, so it's like just enjoy different people and their uniqueness, and even if they're very different from you and maybe they're terrible about something, but it's like, well, because before I was talking about how these young young men and young women, they're just so beautiful and they're just like daisies and perfect. I mean, they're not perfect either in a sense, right? Because when I say perfect, I don't literally mean they're perfect. Like they're like, I mean that um we shouldn't judge people so harshly, and understand that Christ is working through all of us, to accomplish something through us, you
Well,
know,
think of like the most awkward person in the room, and
probably me.
you're you're looking around at everyone and you're kind of making these assessments or whatever, and it's quickly apparent that there's one person in the room that's different than everyone else. Um, what does your opinion of that person matter in light of God's love for them? Like, does it matter that you have an opinion about them, that you think they're awkward? Is that an important detail at all? Does that mean that they should be less involved in the church? Does that mean that you should avoid them? Are these things that we can read about in the Bible? Like,
Mm.
um, work together as a body, um, make sure to keep those awkward people in a corner somewhere. Like, that's not at all the message. In fact,
Yeah,
I would say the message is that we treasure the awkward people. Um,
absolutely.
that feels like the heart of what Christ is saying. And many of the things that, like, when he says, if you've done it for the least of these, you've done it for me, right? So who are the least of these, right? It's
Hmm.
maybe the people that are neglected, that are not popular in the church, that are a little weird or a little off, right? And aren't we called as Christians to lay down our lives for each other, like
Yeah.
Jesus did? Okay, that's hard, but okay, that's cool. Did Jesus lay down his life for people who had it all together? Or for people who had perfect theology, or for people who were nice or clean cut? Like, no, he laid down his life for people at their worst. The worst people he laid down his life for. Like, what
People
if
he knew
all,
would not ever become Christians. People he
yeah,
knew that would not ever accept his gift.
what if all of this blessing is for that purpose? Like, what if this is for, like, okay, like washing the dishes, for instance, right? I've got to wash the dishes and my son wants to help me, but he's not going to wash the dishes the way I would. And uh,
He's probably
so
not going to actually wash them.
so I'm tempted to be like, no, and then he might drop them and break them. And there's all these other things, but what if this is the whole purpose? The whole purpose is to involve him, to let him get in there, to make mistakes, to try it, to do it. What if that was the purpose? I'm laying down my opinions, I'm laying down my preferences of perfect dishwashing experience so that he can come and learn. Like, I'm making it available to him. The opportunity is available so that he can learn, maybe making a mess in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, enjoy it. Like, but I think like for the example of young people I'm thinking of in the church is, you know, um, obviously they're older than our boys and our boys can make some silly mistakes at their age. But like, with like the young 20 somethings in the church, I just think a lot of times you just need to have a conversation with them, you know? And what I'm finding today is that, and here's one of the reasons I mentioned that young people are not perfect today, is that what I find from young people is that often they're afraid to talk. Like often you know, they half their life is lived online or something. And it's difficult for them to actually have community and talk face to face with people. This is not hard for me. Like I could have meetings and talk to people every week. I don't mind doing that. In fact, I would like often like more um face to face with people. But I find that a lot of younger people today, they are used to ghosting people. They're used to not showing up. They're used to not being honest face to face, you know? And so that to me has to change for a lot of young people. And that's part of, right? That's part of what I'm trying to talk about here, which is that, these things go both ways. Like if you want someone to be themselves and be trustworthy and show up, talk to you, well, you're going to have to talk to them. Like you're going to have to let them know, first of all, you make mistakes. You're not perfect. You can't judge other people, you know, and that talking to you makes sense. Like you can get things done. You know what I mean? Like you're not just here making yourself feel good through this conversation. Like that you actually care about them. You actually want to have a relationship with them. And you have to earn that. Like you have to get to the place of committing some time and energy to other people. And then when you do that, and you make a few awkward jokes, then like they might actually show up again, you know? And if you don't, I would not doubt that they would never show up again, like, and not have that conversation with you, so, because what's the point, So I think a lot of young people, they want to get past the whole nonsense of like, oh, we're playing church, we're playing this little game, we're doing all the socially acceptable things, you know? Um, like, and I don't mean just the church with this example of this young guy, this theoretical young guy we're talking about, but also the filmmakers who made this film, other Christian filmmakers who want to make films and do things in the world, like myself, right? We got to get past the whole formal, oh, we're talking now, like, oh, this we're just playing nice. You got to get past that and get to brass tacks. Get to like, no, we're here changing the world. Just one very real conversation, one very real mistake, one very real apology at a time, you know?
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That is not, that's not a bad thing. Like that's a really good thing. And so we have to have all those awkward, difficult moments of like, oh, I don't know if I can trust this group of people coming into my church and getting things all dirty and messy. They're so smelly, you know? It's like, bro, like this is what Christ died for, you know? So, artists are going to be doing lots of things that you find offensive, just like anybody, if you got to really know them. It's not just artists. Okay. Anybody, if you really just actually get to know them, they're going to do something that offends you. And what are you going to do about that? Like, look down on them, treat them like a lesser part of Christ's body. Like, we should not be doing that. So we have to learn to deal with our own biases and our own, real issues. This is why the church is suffering. The church in America is suffering. We have to get through a lot of this nonsense. And I'm proud of some people. I think that, this guy who reviewed this film, I'm proud of him. I think that he did a good job to say that this film is not addressing men's issues. I think a lot more people need to talk about this issue. And this was one of the things I wanted to talk about as well, but we are going to wrap it up. But one of these other things that this brings up for me is that the church has real issues it's not talking about, real big issues. And the issue, like we've talked about before, Sound of Freedom, they're talking about human trafficking. Human trafficking is a major issue. We need to talk and educate people on about, people in the church about it. We need to talk about abortion. We need to talk about men's issues like this one, like this film, um, and like this review talks about. And, you know, these are some serious problems. Artists can broach and can make art dealing with this issue. And this film, The Forge, does not do that in a substantial way. So we need better artists. And it's not even that I'm saying these guys shouldn't be making films. It's fine that they make films, but they also need to hear it from us if these films are not meeting if these films are not meeting the challenge head on. I think we need to also have other films, also have other filmmakers who can talk about this issue differently. And we need some filmmakers to come in from the men's perspective and talk about what they think is the real issue in the church. You know, um, there's a lady, I was listening to one more of her videos, and I'll just wrap it up after this. But you remember I talked about Rachel Wilson, honey?
Mm-hmm.
She talks about something called occult feminism and how it's infiltrated the church. And so infiltrated, yes, that's a very scary word, I know. But it's about influence and about ideology. So there's an ideology that's entered the church, feminist ideology, and it's changed the temperature in the room at the church. It's changed the way we talk and think about things in the church. And so if you look at her book, I think it is called Occult Feminism, her book, it's just so mind blowing. And then when you listen to her talk about it or you read her book, you're just like, that explains so much where you're just kind of blown away. And she has so many facts to back it up that you're like, this is undeniable. I just can't shake the fact of what's happened to our church and how we got here. So I would challenge you to look up that book and maybe, or look up Rachel Wilson. She's Greek Orthodox. And, I respect all the people from all of our different denominations and sects. I think that they all have something great to offer. And there's beauty there. And like the same analogy, it's all different parts of the body of Christ. And we should be cherishing every part of his body. So thank you, you guys. And I hope this wasn't just a big complaining session from me, but you know, um, I thought this was a really important article, and there's a lot more to it, by the way. I didn't read the whole thing, but it's on religionunplugged.com. And his name is Joseph Holmes. He's a great reviewer. I really respect his work. And so check him out and check out the guys from Lore TV as well. We discussed with them last week about their platform and how they are some of the few Christian masculine creators out there who want to make things for men as well. And so we appreciate you guys, and we are working on stuff. We're hoping to work on some stuff. In fact, I need to talk to you about this, honey. I was working in greater depth on a concept about Saint George and the Dragon.
Cool.
So if you remember, we've talked about the story a little bit,
Yeah.
but this just opens my eyes more to like how that story could reveal um, some depth about the church and about Christendom in a way that we haven't discussed before. So I think that would be an interesting story to develop more.
Yeah.
And obviously before then, before actually we shot another film like that, we will be doing Thin Days and Well first before that. So,
Mm.
but any other extra thoughts you have, honey?
Um, it was a good article.
Yeah.
And yeah, Rachel for the patriarchy.
Yeah, Rage for
Um,
Patriarchy. Yep. On
there some
Twitter.
very interesting points. I would say too, like if you can find an interview with her talking about the book, very interesting ideas there. Um,
Kind of mind blowing. You're just kind of like, what?
yeah, yeah, really eye-opening. And
Yeah.
yeah, let's just agree and let Jesus be the king and the head of what we're doing here in Christianity,
Yeah. Yeah.
of whatever it is that we're doing.
Yeah. And Rachel Wilson, she describes herself as a patriarchalist. And so studying that, being able to study that a little bit after she's talked about it, I was like, oh, wow, this is better than complementarianism. It just has more to do with the authority of Christ and the authority of God, and not so much the way we think about each one of us and the sexes. It just has more to do with accepting his authority over us, you know? Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense, you know?
Yeah,
So, yeah,
it,
I mean, thank you, honey, for helping so much with that.
it's you know, the authority of Christ is I'll just try to say it quickly if I can. It's not in any way demeaning. It's liberating.
Yeah.
It's free from self, being free
Mhm.
from the ego and from the self, and
Yeah.
um it's really
True identity in Christ is where you find your
absolutely
identity. Yeah.
it's true identity. It's come to me all you who are weary and heavy laden, you're being unburdened by
Oh,
self
yeah.
when
Put it
you
down. Just
acknowledge
put it
the
down.
authority of Christ.
Yeah.
So, that's just not been the focus of the church for so long. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
They're trying to be good.
Yeah.
They're still trying to be good.
Yeah, let him be good. He was good. He
Yeah.
was good for all of us.
Kind of laughable, isn't it? It's like, oh, come on. Really?
Yeah.
Well,
Where
we
can
love them
people
and we're still working on those people in the church, hoping they improve. Hope no, because
Yes.
that would be me doing the same thing to them that they're doing to me.
Yes,
No,
well,
we're no better than they are, right?
yes.
So that's just how it goes. We're part of the
Yeah.
body. It's all one big beautiful body.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening, and I hope you got something out of this, my rambling nonsense. And check out this dude who's on Religion Unplugged, Joseph Holmes. And
Where can people find out more about you, John?
oh yes, we're still doing that. Um, yeah, you can find my writing on MediaMoses.com. I'm at Jon Croft on Twitter. I'm at the Media Moses on Twitter as well. I'm here on YouTube at Culture Warfare with Jon Croft. So, and how about you,
Awesome.
sweetie?
You can find me on Instagram at Jesus Loves Rebecca and on YouTube at Rebecca Loves Jesus. And I'm I'm attempting to write on Substack, so you can find me there as well.
Yes, yes, I'm on there too.
Yes.
At Trithia,
Yeah, I
Trithia
love
Films.
Substack.
All right, guys, love you and have a great weekend. And we'll see you next time. Stand up for the culture. Good night.